Alright, so today I'm working on the WK again. So when I was looking at different tire sizes and had the wheels off, and I noticed that the boots on my upper control arm ball joints were split on both the upper control arms. The ball joints themselves, they still seem okay, but both the boots were split, and so my experience is once that happens, you know, you're just going to get dirt and everything in there, and so you probably want to replace those sometime soon. So let me show you what I'm talking about here with the upper control arm boots. So this is your upper control arm. There's a ball joint right there that goes into the top of the steering knuckle, and you can see right there, there's a split in that boot. You can see how it's kind of dusty there, not dusty there, and not so dusty in the middle because, well, it's open. And if I pry it back a little, you can see inside there too. Now, I can see there's still some grease in there, and last week I pulled apart the other side and the ball joint looked just fine. I didn't end up replacing it because when I had it apart, I noticed that the rubber bushings on the control arm, they weren't bad yet, but they've been creaking a little bit, and so I figured, well, if I got it apart, I may as well just replace the whole upper control arm. And so I got these off of Amazon, some random Amazon brand, so I don't know how good they are, but I'm going to try them out and see how they work. These, they say, so rather than like the stock ones are adjusted for stock height, but I have a small 2-inch lift on this WK in the front that's done with Bilstein struts, which have an adjustable perch, which gives you 2 inches, and in the rear I just got some spacers. But anyway, when you lift a independent suspension vehicle like the WK, it changes the angle of all the control arms and the ball joints, and so that's changing, you know, when they go down, it's tipping them a lot further than they're supposed to be. It's fine. These have been on here, I think I've had these on here like 6 years, and they're still working fine. Like I said, the ball joints look good except for that boot is ripped. So anyway, these are supposed to have this mounting platform where the ball joint goes in has been adjusted slightly, and they say that these are good for 1 to 4 inches of lift. So that should help to adjust that angle and make it a little bit more how it's supposed to be for the small lift I got on here. So I'm going to put them on and see how they work. Alright, so first thing I got to do after getting the tire off is get this bolt off, rather get the nut off of the upper ball joint, and that's an 18mm, so makes it really a lot easier if you have an impact, because if the ball joint is old, sometimes the stud likes to spin. Normally there might be a flat spot on the bottom of this, but I think I trimmed that off when I put the larger tires on. So, but if you have an impact, it comes right off regardless. And then to get the ball joint out of here, one way is you can whack this flat spot right here with a hammer, and that sometimes works. Yeah, I don't want to whack on it too hard, and so I have this ball joint removal tool. The disadvantage to using something like this, or a pickle fork as they call it, is it can ruin the boot, but in this case I don't care because I'm putting new ball joints and boots in anyway. But anyway, it just goes in there in between the ball joints. This goes on the bottom of the stud, and then you crank the bolt in there and it kind of squeezes it out like that. Good. There you go. Simple as that. Sometimes it'll take a little more pressure, but what I found too is if you get a little pressure on this and then tap on the sides of the knuckle too, sometimes that'll pop it loose if it's being stubborn. So the last time I changed these out was actually when I put these Bilstein struts on the front, and so that time I had the strut out. I don't know for sure if that bolt is going to clear like enough. This one on this side looks like there's enough room to pull it out behind the spring, but this one I'm not sure, because that bolt has to come out in order to get these out. So I don't know, I might have to take the strut tower out as well. If that's the case, there's 4 bolts up on the top, and then it disconnects. I don't know, it's got this little fork thing on the end, and there's a bolt that goes through the lower control arm. And honestly, I don't remember if that might not even come out of there without taking the lower control arm off. So hopefully I can get that upper control arm out without having to take that strut tower out, but I don't know. I'm gonna start trying to undo things and see how far I can get. There's just a couple trim clips, and then this whole inner fender lining will come out. There's one back here as well that's already missing on mine, but I'm gonna pull that out because that'll give me a lot better view. You can see right in here. You'll be able to see that because this is like open to the engine right there. So let me do that real quick. This is like sound deadener that they put in there. All right, now that I got that out of the way, it gives me a lot better view of the backside of that bolt right there. Is what I need to get to. I don't remember if these nuts are welded on or if I need to put a wrench on it, but there's that one there. And then the other side is back there. It's kind of hard to see because it's behind this wire. But anyway, I'm gonna go and try and undo those and see how far I can get in pulling that out. Alright, so I got it moving. Looks like these are 15 millimeter on the inside, and so far I haven't had to put a wrench on the other side, so those might be tacked on. I'm going to keep working on that, and I'll get back to you when I'm a little further along. Alright, so as soon as I said something, it is of course moving on the other side, so those are not tacked on after all. So I'm going to need to put a wrench on the other side. Looks like the other side is a 18 millimeter, and this is a 15 on that. So the nut is an 18, but the head of the bolt is a 15. Sorry about the noise. I got a fan going because it's kind of hot out here, and it makes it a lot better. So, all right. So here's my problem now. As I feared, that bolt is hitting the spring, so I'm not sure what I'm going to do about that. I'd really rather not take the whole strut out, but it's looking like I might not have a choice. Let me play around with it for a minute and see if I can figure anything else out. Alright, well, looks like I'm not going to have a choice. I'm going to have to, at the very least, take the top of the strut mount out. So I'm wondering if maybe if I take the strut mount out, will that allow the lower suspension arm to droop down enough that I can drop it below those bolts and just slightly pull this out a little bit to allow me clearance behind it. I don't know, because I don't know at what point I may have to take the sway bar off, or the steering may catch it. I don't know what's going to keep it from doing that. If that doesn't work, then I have to take this bolt out, and then that will allow me to move this back and forth. I guess I'm going to start working on getting those bolts out. It's not super terrible, except you got to take your coolant overflow out, because there's two of the bolts right there and right there, and then the other two are right here, and there's another one underneath the coolant overflow. So I guess I better just get to work on that. So this thing right here, that little plastic thing right there on top of this one, so this is just the vent line for the front differential, and this is a vent for it, and this is just a little plastic thing that you push, that gets pushed on there to hold it up out of the way. So I should just be able to pry that off, and then I'll be able to access all four bolts now. If that got me any closer. Moves. Something holding it up though. Sway bar. There we go. That got it to drop down really good there, so there's a nice good gap, and hopefully that means I can pop this out now. Huh. I don't know. Still, it got a little further, but it's still hitting, so I'm gonna see if I can wiggle this around and get that out of there. Thinking maybe if I get this other side out, then I can move this around and maybe that'll help me get that one out. I don't know, but that's what I'm thinking now, so that's what I'm going to try. I got the same problem on this side. So yeah, so this whole thing looks like might have to come out. Well, since none of that worked, looks like my next option is looking like taking this bolt out. You can see right there and right there. So there's this fork that goes on the end of the strut and then connects to the control arm. So if I take that out, then the whole thing should drop down slightly and I can move it down further this way, and hopefully that'll give me all the space I need. So I'll take that one out and see where I'm at. So that's cool. That one's got a tab on it, so you don't need to put a wrench on the other side. There you go. Hey, movement. Let's see if that's enough. Oh. There we go. There, that should give me enough room. Maybe. Hey, there's one. And there's two. So, yeah. So, it definitely looks like in order to get the upper control arm out, you're gonna have to unbolt the strut pretty much completely as well. So, all right, but I got it out. On to the next thing. All right, so I got the new arms ready to go in. There's bolts there to hold the ball joint in. I'm not sure. I've heard that these use ball joints from an Escalade, but I haven't been able to find out exactly the year of Escalade, but that's a problem for whenever these wear out. So I got these tightened in. There's grease fittings they give you. They come with these little right angle ones. This one lined up pretty straight. I couldn't find one that lined up straight on this side, so I just put a straight grease fitting in this side that I had, and I have a right angle grease gun fitting that will fit on there. There's plenty of room up above there where it goes in. They also come with these little spacer washers that go on the end. They come with enough to go one on either side, but from what I can tell, I only need one on the one side. And I'm assuming that is just so it doesn't slide back and forth on this inner sleeve, because these are greased and you can see there's little grease coming out there. And so they're designed to like rotate on these inner sleeves, but you definitely don't want it moving forward or backward, because that'll cause your, it'll do weird things when you're turning. Your whole axle will shift weird. Anyway, I'm gonna see if I can get this in here. Debating whether I should put this bolt in back this way because it's a whole lot easier. On this side, it's way easier. Yeah. Going just like that. This side I could do the same thing, but I have to take the airbox out, which I might do because that would make it a whole lot easier, and I might not have to remove the strut if I ever have to change these out again. Let me take a look at that. Alright, so I took the air cleaner out and to see what takes take this airbox out. And yeah, it looks like it's just held in with that one bolt back there. So I'm gonna go ahead and get that out and get that out of my way and see if that gives me better access to that bolt. All right, so I got the airbox out and now I have great access to that. And so I'm just gonna put this in from this side because that'll make it a whole lot easier if I ever have to work on these again. There we go. Definitely easier though with this out of the way, so I don't know if this will make any difference. On the other side, the battery is around here too, so I have no idea if I'm gonna run into issues with that or not. All right, so I got those snugged down good. And I just snugged them up right now because when you're doing suspension stuff like this, you want to wait till you have the weight of the vehicle on the suspension before you torque it down to their final torque. So I'm not torquing them up yet, I just snugged them down. Now I'm going to try and get the strut back in and then get the ball joint connected and so forth. While I was working on this, I was just, noticing the way they did the front suspension on the WK. It's kind of cool. This is a unibody vehicle, but it's almost built like a vehicle with a regular frame on it. because you got your frame rail right here, and then you got your shock tower, or in this case a strut tower, going up over there, which is, and all of this is open and all of that's open, so it's almost like a, you know, a frame vehicle. It's pretty cool the way they did this. Once you get the plastic and the airbox out of the way, there's actually a good amount of room to work with here. And then of course, you know, the strut tower is tied into the fender here, so that's, you know, more of the unibody structure. But then they got the brace across both towers. It's very interesting. It's very similar to how you do, like, if you had a frame, you could just put your own, you know, shock tower on here and so forth, and put like a solid axle in there. Okay, so I just switched the jack so that it's underneath the suspension and pushing up on that. So get that right in the place we need it, and make sure it's all the way up. Alright, so I repositioned the jack so it's now underneath the control arm, so it's supporting the vehicle by the suspension. I'm not on my jack stand anymore, so we're entirely supported. So this is on its own weight basically. So now I'm going to crank down, I'm going to tighten the ball joint down, and I'm going to tighten those upper control arm and the lower control arm to torque, since it's on its weight, since it's sitting on the jack, which is supporting it by the suspension. And this is doing exactly what I was saying before. It is spinning the ball joint. There's an Allen hole on the bottom of this stud. See that? There's a spot right there you can put an Allen wrench. That's kind of annoying because that means I have to use an open-ended wrench. But let me see if I can use that to get it started. And the taper should hold in there once it gets in there. So let me see what I can do. "55 foot-pounds is all it calls for on these." So I'm going to mark them with a paint marker just to be sure, so I can tell if they rotate. So now all I have to do is just keep an eye on that paint right there and make sure that this doesn't move any further, the nut doesn't move that way. But it's just an easy way to tell, to make sure your bolts aren't loosening them up on themselves when you drive. Alright, so I'm going to go and torque on the upper control arm and the lower control arm. So one place I found said 80 for these and another said 90, and they both claim to be out of the factory service manual. So I figure I'll just shoot the gap and go for 85. And this one down here for the lower, where the strut attaches, that one's 125. They all seem to agree on that. I think the last thing I have to reattach is this sway bar link. Alright, I think all that's left is to put the wheel back on. Actually, before I do the wheel, I think I'm going to put the airbox back in because it'll be a whole lot easier having the space and also the plastic. So I'm going to take care of that and then get back to the... Alright, so there's what it looks like when it's in there. You can see there's a little bit more of an up angle on this one, so that when it droops, it doesn't kink the ball joint quite as much as the idea. So the other side's pretty much more the same. I'll let you know when I finish that up. Alright, so it's been a little while. It's actually been probably over a month now since I did the passenger side control arm on the WK, and that side. So it's been working great. We took it off-road. Everything seems to be fine, no problems. Everything seems to be working okay there. So anyway, I figured it was about time that I got the driver's side done too, because same problem on this side. The boot on the ball joint is split. You can kind of see that right there in there. See that? That should not be open right there. Anyway, the ball joint still seems good, but there's dirt and stuff getting in there, so it was time. Driver's side, pretty much the same thing. I didn't really film any of it because it's the same thing I already showed you, but it's in there now, and I'm just going to tighten everything up. The only thing that was different on this side is, so on the passenger side, I had to take the strut, disconnect the strut at the top and the bottom to be able to drop it down and move it to get the bolts out back there for the control arm. But on this side, I started to do that because I figured I was going to have to do the same thing. So I had all the bolts out. I just put the nuts back on now. But anyway, I didn't actually have to do that. So you may want to try and see if you can get those bolts out before you go to the trouble of trying to take the strut out. Because on this one, I was able to get the, I got this, which is near the front of the vehicle. I got this one out first because there was more room. And then once I had the control arm out, I could kind of wiggle it and get that one out. That's all. I just wanted to mention that you may want to see if you can kind of move things and wiggle things around before you go to all the trouble of unbolting that strut. Anyway, I'm gonna get everything torqued back up and then yeah. All right, I got everything torqued down back together. Everything looks good. There's the new control arm up in there. Got everything all greased up, torqued in, so should work out well. And as always, thanks for watching.